Good afternoon. Welcome to the first ever episode of Data Stream Live. I am joined by Owain Brennan from Seer BI and Flitter, who is going to speak about AI in the maritime industry and its applications with import and export documentation, and all things data science and AI. Owain, it's great to have you on the first ever Data Stream Live.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, very happy to be a part of it. Yeah, excited.
No problem at all. So let's jump straight in. Who are you, Owen? I'll let you introduce yourself. I think you'll probably do it more justice than I. So, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am Owain Brennan. I'm the CEO of Seer BI as well as the CTO of Flitter. So I've been involved in the maritime sector for quite a few years now, and been involved with data science even longer. A bit of background on myself: I grew up in the US, but now live in the northeast of the UK. Been programming from a very young age. Linux, first operating system being Linux. So learned the hardware. First programming I remember was pirating movies, recording them so that they'd work on lots of devices. So learning the hardware again. But yeah, so my data science journey just started around that, of being interested in small projects, getting involved with things on the side, and just picking up skills as I went on. So things like Python came through there. Then the interest in business was just a natural one of, I think a lot of people have, where they didn't want to work for someone else. Knew I could build things, just needed to figure out how I could sell it. So yeah, the kind of starting a business side just came from a personal interest to want to take it out my and selling the thing that I wanted to build anywhere. But really just came from building in the first place. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to go into like university and things like that, what I did there, or yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I'm really interested in how you started. You say it as a kid or when you were younger, you were programming and encoding pirated movies and things like that. Sorry to any coppers that may be watching. But it's slightly unusual. How did you get into that, and how did you go down the more data science route than the traditional, more like software development route? Because I think that's where
Yeah.
a lot of people would fall into. What made
Mm-hmm.
you more attracted to data science and AI?
Yeah, data science kind of started to come around from, yeah, I mean, so pirating videos and things like that, when we first started, essentially came from it. I wanted to watch movies. Parents wouldn't take me to go buy some movies, so how can I get them online? I don't have any money. I'll go pirate them. It wouldn't work on that computer, so how can I make them work on my computer? And that somehow through that, I ended up picking up Python. I must have been, I don't know, 10 or 11 then, possibly. But yeah, essentially started lots of small side projects from there, things like web scraping. I think it fell more naturally out of the web scraping stuff. So I started to look at things like IP collection and listening to servers and things like, not malicious servers, just listen to what was coming through my own server, an home router at home. And then I was kind of looking at all of this data and understanding, okay, there's a lot of different rows of things here. What could I do with that? Can I put it on a chart? Okay, so I'll put it into a graph and see what that looks like. And then, yeah, I started to look at things like when PyTorch got released, these things became easier to do. I wasn't fantastic at mathematics or statistics. I've got better at it now as I've needed to, but it came more from the programming side than the statistics side of machine learning, which I think makes it much easier to sell as well. I'm more closely connected to the business side of it, so can explain it from their perspective, rather than some people try to sell data science and things like that and go very statistical, maths heavy with it, which no business operator, CEO is ever going to buy from that side. So yeah, it just kind of came down that route of hacking things together, understanding it. And obviously there's lots of amazing tools now that can allow you to pick up data science quite quickly. The packages that are available, TensorFlow, PyTorch, all of those, for any person that's all right at Python can probably get onto data science quite quickly. Not all of them are available when I started, but yeah, they're around now.
So on that point then, regarding mathematics, statistics, modeling, because that's pretty much essentially what data science and AI is, isn't it? It's pretty much applied advanced mathematics and statistics. So, regarding what you said about the technical side of things, is that what part of your motivation for setting up Seer BI, which was you saw that a lot of people were pushing the algorithms and the very technical jargon to business owners where it didn't really resonate?
Yeah. I mean, Seer BI came from, yes, that side of it, of I saw what was possible within data science and AI. Large models were just starting off. But the sector that specifically I was looking at, which is the maritime sector, I had a network in there. I saw that it wasn't just that they didn't understand it, and it wasn't that people weren't selling it to them. It just wasn't being used at all. It wasn't being discussed within that sector. So my kind of thought process was, well, I'll go and take all these things that I know and see if people want them. And then it worked quite well. We got some good initial projects, and we're able to position data science in a very specific way that makes it easy for port operators, logistics, shipping firms to be able to buy it. Because the buying cycles within that sector and lots of other traditional sectors are very difficult to get through. So you have to, we couldn't act like a normal data science agency. We had to position things and contracts in a very specific way to get them through that pipeline. And that, but yeah, that was just kind of a side piece of what we saw as a gap in the market, really, you could call it. Yeah.
And is that specifically maritime? How did you get into ports and shipping? Is that something you've done in the past, and you sort of thought, oh, I'm working in shipping, and there's a huge gap within data science and data related technologies. Is that how you fell into it, or
Yeah.
was how did you get into
Yeah,
it?
I've been interested in maritime and shipping, ships and things like that for as long as I can remember. When I was in America as well, back in the UK, I was a sea scout in both places. So yeah, sailing and kayaking and things like that, doing all the knots and ropes. I've always been interested in that. Not so much from a commercial side, just I like water and boats was probably the extent of it. But then when I was in university at Teesside, there was a program called Volunteers where I could volunteer for essentially an organization. And through there, I worked for a company, well, a charity called the High Tide Foundation. I'm getting students, not university level, like kind of ending at starting college. So yeah, primary, secondary school, getting them into different sectors of jobs, but the majority of the work was around the maritime sector. So I was interested to it. I ended up volunteering there for about 6 months, and then they hired me as a part-time, doing initially marketing and business support, but then they figured out I could program, and then hired me as kind of a technical lead. And throughout COVID, just before COVID as well, I built essentially a digital platform for them where they could deliver what they were doing nationally or internationally on this platform. But then the board of this charity was a bunch of maritime operators, so a local port operator, a customs agency, a logistics firm. See, I was speaking with them a lot as I was building the platform. They realized I was technical and could do these things, so they started to give me some freelance projects. So it just kind of again fell into it that way of yeah, they had some data projects and were like, I have this Excel sheet. It looks like crap. What can I do with it? What can I build with this? I said, well, give it to me for a week and I'll give you something back. And it just kind of fell out of there. The project from those people got a little bit bigger, got a bit more interesting. We had to hire staff, and then Seer BI fell out the back of it, really.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Touch on that a little bit more, because I find that interesting when you
Yeah, yeah.
say technical, and it's funny technical, isn't it? Because you start getting palmed on many different directions and every sort of technology. And how do you manage that in terms of, do business people understand the difference between sort of data science, AI, machine learning
Mhm.
versus software development, web, development, things like
Yeah.
this? Or do you just kind of get thrown in and go, well, that's computers, isn't it? That's Owen's department.
Yeah, it depends the size of the organization. I think really, if we're working with like a small logistics firm that has 3 members of staff, yeah, they wouldn't not know. Well, they would know the difference, but they probably wouldn't care. It's not part of their daily operations, so
Right.
why would they invest the time to learn it? But in something like a port that has 800 employees, they probably already have some kind of data department as well as an IT department. So when we're selling to those kind of organizations, which is kind of our main market, is yeah, ports, ship owners, these larger logistics and customs firms. That market that we're selling to, usually we aren't selling to the CEO or the board level. It's usually the people that are in charge of the data team or the IT team or the innovation team, whatever they want to call it. Um, So at that level, they do have that clear understanding of what is Seer BI coming in to do. They're coming in to build this dashboard or AI model or deploy this or innovate this little space that we're looking at. So that's what I was saying, where the way that we position what we do is very specific to make it easy for them to buy. We're not trying to sell to the CEO of a port. We're trying to sell to the innovation leader at a port, which is much easier to digest and kind of targets our market. Even within a niche market, we're going very specific of, I'm going to find Jasmine, who runs this department, and sell to her because she runs all of that. It's
Fantastic. So, what kind of AI have you deployed within these sort of businesses? A lot of people are talking about AI now largely with large language models, ChatGPT, generative AI. I'm assuming that's not what you mean when it comes to shipping and maritime. So, what is it that you've built for these kind of clients in the past?
Yeah. There's three main strands that we look at, really. There's the first one is it touches more so on your traditional software programming than it is AI, but it's the platform level. So we do have an in-house UI UX designer, and we have a front end team. So we can develop platforms, but those platforms will essentially bring in the back end AI stuff. But yeah, if we're going to a port that doesn't have their own system, then we do have to build some kind of interface for them. So that's usually the top level layer, and that's not really AI. We might hook in something like GPT as like a panel within there, so they have a chatbot that's in their interface. It's probably the highest level of that. The more interesting stuff when you go down is what we refer as, and what the industry is starting to wake up to, is agentic AI. Essentially, your AI systems that exist in the background of something are triggered automatically, go and talk to multiple models, and then spit something out the back of it. So that, for example, might be when a ship is coming into port and we want to use a computer vision model, it could be, to collect the registration of that. We want to, when that ship comes in and the cranes start going, we want to start collecting some of the other information that's on there, like the speed of the cranes and the weight that it's picking up for each container. We then might collect the people on the ground might be filling out reports, so the system then collect that information, and then in the end turn it into a written report or into a record within a database. So it's collecting all these things from multiple places, generating something with it, and that could be using a language model, or it could just be using regular software practices to merge these different rows, and then creating something in the end. So that's agentic AI sample, and Alberta is also an example of that in customs, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. So that's your agentic AI stack. And then you have everything that agentic AI stack is doing, those individual model development as well. So someone might just want, for example, a computer vision model that can detect, one of our early ones and early projects was looking at ship detection. That was a really interesting project. So that was when a ship collision detection we looked at. So essentially looking at, can we see when two ships hit each other? But there isn't much training data for that. So we had to go to a generative model to generate the images of ship collisions, so we could then train it on that. It was a really interesting project. We worked with the university for it, and we ended up making a really good model. We found that with computer vision models, we're about to publish a paper on this as well, with computer vision models, if you train it with 75% real data, 25 synthetic, you get better results than if it was 100% real data.
Okay.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. That is interesting, because I think a lot of the time that training data set is really hard to come by for a lot of companies. And, mm-hmm. I think everyone's waking up to the benefits and the applications of AI. But then when you start getting down to it, you say, great, give me the training data set, and you might have a few examples that you might have collected over the years, but we need a lot more than that. So you're saying that synthetic data is not only a quick fix to solve that problem, it's actually a better way of doing things than 100% organic or original training data.
Yeah, that particularly, I want to highlight particularly for computer vision model looking at ship collision. If you're looking at anything slightly different, it might not be as good, but that was the one test that we did. But yeah, we're happy users of synthetic data. There's a great company that we've interacted with before as a company called Synthesized, where they deal with a lot of financial data. So if a bank, for example, wants to train an ML model, they pass all their data through an API, through synthesized, and it spits out a statistically comparable data to the original. And then without using company data. Yeah, sorry, my dog is not barking.
No problem. I was going to say, and then how do you make sure that the computer vision model is identifying ship collisions and not, say, the presence of a container or bad weather or anything else that might be in the data set?
But that essentially through our testing data set is all real data on the other side. So essentially we have our large test set, pass that through, and then validate on top of that. The use case for the first few months of deployment as well was completely non-commercial within research aspects. We've worked with one of the operators for lighthouses on this project. So they allowed us, the idea was to have a virtual lighthouse. So you could put a camera on a lighthouse, instead of it kind of spinning around and having a light on it, it would have a camera that spins around and you have it as a virtual one that you can detect ships. Working with them, collecting lots of test data, validating the model allowed us to do that.
Fair enough. And what have you identified any challenges within the industry regarding shipping and maritime that are just so prevalent and really AI could be the answer to a lot of these challenges? Is there something that's, or a few things that are really troubling the ports, shipping and maritime industry at the minute?
Yeah, I think the big one that a lot of people are looking at is the health and safety side. There are quite a few operators looking at that, but documentation for health and safety within maritime is a huge thing. Obviously, it's a very dangerous industry. You're on ships are dangerous, ports are dangerous. But anytime you've got people there, you're going to have a lot of regulations, and there's a lot of paperwork behind that. So I know there's a big push within the sector to standardize a lot of that. That's a huge one on the ports and ships themselves, is how could you use AI to standardize that documentation, make it more digestible, essentially deliver it in a way that works for people that are on the ground and working on maybe a small tablet at best, but probably on a notebook. How do you communicate that? Big one. Another one is the legal terms around shipping, the trading terms. That's one a lot of people looking at. Essentially, every time that something gets traded on the sea or a ship sets off, you've got a bunch of contracts behind that, and you have terms that are used for those, but all the clauses can be different. Like one ship operator might reimburse you if the ship goes down and all of the cargo gets lost. You might get reimbursed in one way, or you could get reimbursed in 50 different ways. But essentially, each time a ship sets off, you have 200 pages of a contract rewritten. So again, that's another use case where AI could come in, and you've got the negotiation side of when one term gets changed, how does that affect the rest of the contract? I think there's an interesting use case there. People have tried to solve it for a while in traditional ways, but I think an LLM can squeeze into that trading side quite well.
Right. I think a lot of people don't realize that even large text and documents is still data, right? I think when people think data, they think spreadsheets, numbers, letters, things that fit into Excel. When it's a 200-page PDF, I think people stop thinking that that's still data that we can interrogate and use AI to answer loads of key challenges. So it's interesting that you pick up on that one. You keep mentioning as well, in terms of computer vision and devices and the sort of infrastructure. So how much collaboration do you need to really do with people that provide things like sensors and cameras and things for you to collect that data to then run these machine learning models on? Is that something that you engage with? You have to sort of partner with other organizations to do that?
Yeah, so we don't have our own. Lighthouses definitely. I don't have my own lighthouse. I need to borrow those. We need to collaborate quite a lot with hardware providers. We don't make our own hardware or anything like that. Teesside University have been a great collaboration for us. They have a really good resource of IoT engineers. They've been a great one for us to essentially go to and ask questions. But really, each time that we do a project like that, we really just end up rescoping the market. If we're doing something like machine learning or AI locally using the sensors, our go-to is a NVIDIA Jetson. They're a great device. We're an NVIDIA Inception partner, and we have been since when we founded. So that's allowed us to get discounts on a lot of NVIDIA hardware, and we have a few data center tight GPUs in the office, which is nice. But then, yeah, essentially any model that we train on those work really well on Jetsons as well. They're all encoded the right way, super deployable. But yeah, on the actual sensor side, it's really up to what the use case is. We've done things like carbon calculation within ports when a port was putting some seagrass into the port to see if they could capture carbon using seagrass, but needed to monitor that. So for that one, we needed a very specific underwater carbon sensor. They wanted a few other sensors for things like moisture detection. Obviously, it was 100% moisture because it's underwater. No one expected that one. But yeah, they had a few different sensors that needed to be bespoke. So we had to work with a few different providers for that as well.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting how you've got to, it's cross collaboration. It's not just software. It also then reaches out into hardware because suppose you're doing data analysis, aren't you? And you need to be able to capture that data. So if that hardware doesn't already exist, you need to start looking at what capture that. So moving on to go on.
I was going to say, we try to stay within our field of what we're doing. Specifically, maritime data science will handle the data, and we stick within that side. We're not trying to expand into those other parts as much, and we're really open about collaboration. I'd say 80% of the projects we've done, we've worked with an outside company. So be that a science company or a hardware provider or a university, we're very open collaboration on that side. Yeah.
That's interesting. So talk to me then about import-export documentation. Why is that such a problem within the maritime industry? I don't want to blame Brexit, but I feel like has it got worse or has that had any impact? So I imagine it has, right? Or has it always been an issue before Brexit as well? Or is this more of a novel issue?
Yeah, it's always been an issue. UK imports and exports have never been great. They definitely became worse as of Brexit, though. So before Brexit, all of UK imports and exports were handled through a system called Chief. Customs handling, import, export, something. But yeah, so that was a system that was in place for years, didn't really have an API. It could only be communicated to by government approved software houses, essentially, and there were only 4 of them. One of them was DHL, so you couldn't use their system. A few others as well, but essentially you had to go through these middle companies to talk to Chief to do your imports and exports.
Right.
So it was a bit of a blocker, as well as like Chief itself just didn't work very well. There were blockers that there's some that are in Chief that have now been passed over to the new system. Things like you can only have 99 line items in a customs declaration is a big one within the sector right now. So if you're bringing over a container worth of goods, let's say it's peanuts, you could only have 99 packages within you could have 99, more than 99 packages in a container, but you have to split that into multiple declarations, which you then have to charge for, and there's a lot more complication around. Now, the government said for years that they were going to make declarations be 9,999 items long. So you could fit, if your one importer like Asda was bringing in a whole load of beef, they could bring all of their beef in on one customs declaration because it's all be the same-ish commodity code, and you could process them through. But you have to split them into having 50 declarations instead because you've got 99 items, just data problems. But that's just one example of these crazy things that the government has done. So that was all prevalent in Chief, but now we've got the new system, which is post-Brexit, called CDS, which came with a huge API, essentially, a very open API. You have to get approved for it, and thankfully we are approved for it. The approval process is much less restrictive as the original one, though. Essentially, you couldn't apply for the original one. This one, you just go through, validate your API calls, and you can talk to HMRC. So the new CDS one, you can use the API. The structure of the data is much cleaner. But on the customs agent side, for when they're doing the paperwork, there is a lot more things they have to put down because we're no longer aligned with the EU on some of the clearance codes, for example. We're also not really aligned on commodity codes. We are every now and again, but sometimes they shift. So, for example, a leather jacket has a very specific commodity code in the UK. that commodity code might be one digit different in the EU, but it means every single time that I export from the EU, I use one code. On the import declaration, I have to use another code. So, and you think that's just one item out of the billions of things you import. Yeah. So it's a big data problem, essentially, and yeah, it was made worse through Brexit.
But you said that the system is better now post Brexit than Chief was, because it's more open for more players to send data to it. But there's still challenges within it, and most of those challenges are data related issues.
Yeah, so it's CDS is better for essentially data scientists and developers that want to build on top of it, but it's worse for customs agents because they get more paperwork and have to try and align with the EU system. So there's good sides and bad sides to it. Yeah.
So what have you done then exactly? Let's get on to Flitter regarding making that easier for, I'm guessing, shipping, port,
Yeah.
logistics companies. How have you made it easier?
So Flitter essentially is one of these agentic AI systems that I mentioned earlier. Essentially, we can receive is a few different documents. So it could be a commercial invoice, or just like your invoice for I'm ordering 4 jackets. They cost this amount, whatever it is. We can get a commercial invoice. We can get a packing list. So that could be how the things are actually packed into the truck. So it might say, I have 4 leather jackets and I've put them on a wooden pallet that weighs this much, and I'm putting it in a container. And that's a standard document you'll get with any import or export. You might get a CMR or a health certificate as well. So a health certificate is if you're importing food, you need to have essentially a rubber stamped by a vet. So you've got that type of document. So we can receive all of those. Generally, the way that our users use the system is through email. And we did that very specifically because it was fast to launch. But also, we know that customs agents, most of their workflow is handled through email. So we said, well, let's not make them open another tab or open another system. We'll just allow them to be in their inbox anywhere. And then it saves time in that workflow process. So they will collect, they might get all of the documents from different sources, or they could just be emailed directly to the customs agent, who will forward them or auto forward them to us. So we'll give them an email address, they forward it to us. We essentially take all that information and assign things like all of the duty rates to those items, all of the clearance codes, collect all the certificates, and make it into the specific format to deliver to HMRC or to one of their integration partners. So we have a suite of integrations on the other side, which could be Descartes eCustoms, ASM Sequoia, CargoWise, some of those 3 other companies that used to talk to HMRC. So we can deliver to those or direct to HMRC if we wanted. So essentially, it's that workflow of they don't have to do this task of going through those 5 different documents, making sure all the codes are correct, creating a declaration, assigning all of the duty codes, assigning the clearance codes, and then dropping it into a government somewhere. We handle all for them. That was a 2-hour job before. Now it's as fast as my server will go, about 0.2 seconds. But yeah, at current load, but that might slow down.
Okay. How do you deal with then the attachment? Because I can't imagine they're all standardized, right? You were mentioning before that legal terms and documentation aren't even standardized. So how do you handle that then if PDFs or Excels or whatever files come in and they're all sort of laid out differently and might have different terms and things like that? How do you handle that?
So that's where the AI side of things come in, essentially. So we have a few different OCR models we use. So if it's our favorite is obviously things like Excel, CSV. We can read the rows automatically. They get through. That's nice and easy. Take a customs agent, Excel, CSV, rows formats, import thousands of items, they have to assign those. But still, we can save time there. If it's a PDF, or sometimes you can get like a screenshot of what we have a suite of OCR tools where we essentially have the back of the OCR tools. We process it through multiple of them and then get the best version of the output. When they go through those OCR tools, we then have what we call validation and engine to validate those. For example, the commodity codes match what the item description is. and assign all of this customer's knowledge, enrich the document with customer's knowledge, and then process through the declaration. But yes, our least favorite is the PDF. But models do it, and we have around a 98% success rate. And they aren't standardized, but they are semi-standardized, I guess, in invoice. There are tools out there that read invoices, and it's not like you know what kind of things you're expecting, you know what kind of tables you're expecting. A scan through that looks like the wipe or something, but essentially we can't read those. Our statement is that if you can't read it, then how do you expect the system to read it?
No, of course, of course. Okay, so key benefit there then is you're taking the customer data and enriching it with your own sort of customs knowledge database as well to then process that through and get it through a lot quicker. Essentially, it's not just the customer data, is what I'm trying to touch on there.
Yes, yes. So we have a language model that we've essentially fine tuned that is perfect for this use case. So we have a language model that's fine tuned, as well as kind of static data list as well that we reference that has been built up with our collaborating partner who we've co-founded the product with. Essentially, through those two aspects, we're enriching this document with customer's knowledge and then verifying off of the back of that. And then there's the auditing. We have a few different modules. So there's extraction, creation of document, validation, enrichment, and then auditing, and then delivery at the end.
Right. Okay. And you touched on it there. You've got a sort of a partner in this project as well, Casper Group. If I'm right in saying, what was the benefit or what was the attraction to partnering with them? What did they offer to sort of that mix? Why rely on them? Who are they for a start? For anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah. The group are a large maritime group that existed for this is their 101st year, I think. So they're a group. They have a few different organizations beneath them. So they have a chartering company that owns a few ships. They have a logistics company that handles things like trucks and airplanes coming in. They have a customs agency, which we interact with. They have Casper Digital, that we also interact with a lot. And then they have a defense company. So there's a few different things under that. They were one of our first customers in Seer. We've worked across the multiple group structure as Seer. Our first interaction with Casper Group was actually through the High Tide Foundation as well. They were one of the companies on the High Tide Foundation board. So I got introduced to them, which was nice. But yeah, in terms of the product, we'd built Flitter as an internal tool originally for Casper Group within Casper Customs. Within that, essentially interacted with Casper Digital, which is headed by Alan Appleyard. And he essentially came one day and said, look, we've built this thing together. It's been launched. It's been working. I think a lot of other people outside of the company could use this. Like he'd been mentioning it at trade shows. They'd been talking about on their socials a little bit of we have automation. And we were gaining interest. But essentially, Casper had never launched a digital project before. They'd never done a startup. They'd never built a product really. And I didn't have the customs knowledge myself to go out and build this thing and deliver it. And it was essentially their IP when we started because it was done internally for them. So we came together and said, okay, there's interest in this to bring it forward. So it essentially was born from there. So it was kind of built originally for Casper Customs. Casper Digital wanted to take it forward. And we've all come together to do the product. And we still collaborate closely with them as well. They're a good testing ground for the product. There's no better testing than live environments. And we get great feedback from their team too.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You always touch on there's no better testing than in live environments because it's easy for it to run on your laptop or your server, and it's like, oh, it works perfectly, 99.9% accuracy, and then you deploy it, and you're like, there's a lot we didn't take into account here. But what I wanted to say is that that's where the real value is, then I suppose, is that partnership and collaboration between someone with vast amounts of industry specific knowledge and you guys with vast amounts of data science and machine learning knowledge coming together to do the two, because I feel like in isolation it wouldn't be as good. They don't have the technical know-how to do it, and you don't really have the domain knowledge to really know where the problems lie and the best way to deliver a solution. Do you want to touch a bit about that, on how it's so important to maybe work with these leaders and experts in their industry to identify those problems, and just touch on that slightly?
Yeah, 100%. I'd recommend anyone that's looking to do a product that's facing an industry, if you don't have that industry experience, but you've identified a gap in it, then yeah, I'd 100% recommend either co-founding with a company that's been in it for years or understands it, or just getting someone from that company on your board. It gives you a much better insight into it. Um, and yeah, I mean, as you say, it would have been impossible, I think, for either company to launch it by ourselves. And it kind of gives the product a bit more weight as well, because we're kind of known within the sector for doing data science. And Casper are very well known as a customs agent. They're known for excellence within the sector. Their motto is like always on. So because we have kind of both brand images as well, we're both talking about it. There's a lot more noise in the sector for our product too. So it's not just the kind of operational and technical side of it. It's the fact that you have like support from both companies, kind of invaluable. We've bought finance department, legal, and things like that, where it's kind of two heads are better than one put into practice. But it's rather than two heads, it's like 50 heads are better than one, really.
No, absolutely, because that's the main issue with data scientists, is that domain knowledge. We have, we've always worked in, not always worked in, but a lot of us are dedicated to data science and machine learning. So having 20 years in banking or finance or shipping in this case is rare. So it really underlines that importance of working with industry experts. So how does, you touched on it slightly, but Flitter integrates? So if I wanted to, if I was a shipping company, or a port, how could I start integrating Flitter into my existing infrastructure? What does that process look like?
So there's multiple ways that we can work, and customs declarations is kind of what we're focusing on right now, but it's not the only thing Flitter can do. Essentially, we have those different modules and pipelines, from enrichment to extraction, validation, enrichment, creation. All of that are available to our customers as separate modules. So it might be that you're creating a customs declaration. It could be that you're creating a GVMS record, or you're putting a shipping record into a database. Anything that you're extracting data from one place with multiple documents that you want to either check that they're all got the same records. For example, I said before, the packing list and commercial invoices. A lot of the time, or some of the time, those might be different. So you might have purchased 7 jackets, but there's 4 jackets on here. So
Okay.
one of the modules we offer is telling our customers how in line those 2 documents are, which we've found is a lot more there's a lot more cases for that part of it than there has been for that declaration. People love that validation and checking the documents. So we're pushing forward. So yeah, we can do more than just the customs declaration. But if someone wanted to work with us, essentially our onboarding period is around a week. So they would get in contact with us on our website. We can book a demo, or you can sign up directly on our website. They would then essentially be given an account manager for that first week, where we would figure out how they want to connect. So we have multiple ways to pull data in. We have our own API that you can send data to. We can set up the email format. You can do that within our platform. You set up essentially what your email wants to look like. Most of our customers, we have a recommended format, which is, if you're a customs agent, let's say your customer is KFC, you'd have KFC dot the customs agent's name at flitter.trade, and then you'd forward all the emails there with your documents. We can also we have integrations with Sedna, which is a very well-known shipping email platform. And we have integrations with Outlook, SharePoint, so we can pick up files from there too. So we'd figure out what the data in method is. We'd then go through the different modules and figure out what you want to do with the data. If it's customs, then you can just go live that day. Those modules are ready. If it's something a bit more specific, if you want to do things like GVMS, which is a truck record, or you want to just deliver the data somewhere else, or if you just want that validation piece, you can essentially select those modules and tell us. Or if it's something bespoke, then let us know. And then, yeah, essentially you can get onboarded and your data will start flowing. We can also then set up your output as well. So the standard workflow is email in, process. We send you an email back out with confirmation and the attached document. Or if you want us to deliver that directly to Descartes Customs, ASM Supplier, CargoWise, or HMRC, then you hand over your API codes for those, and then we go that way. So that's our general workflow. But yeah, just contact us and tell us what you want to do, Lisman.
No, sounds fantastic. So, key benefits then, I'm guessing, I'll let you listen, but I'm guessing saving time, efficiency, accuracy maybe as well, in terms of less
Yeah, accuracy
human
is
error.
the human focus on. Essentially, there's a lot of errors that can be made in that human process of handling. Sometimes a customs declaration could be made up of 10 documents, and even the best human looking at 3 PDFs, 2 Excel sheets, 1 CSV, you can quite easily make a mistake on a customs declaration. But essentially, when we've set up the system, we can say it won't make a mistake on those. So we can essentially, in that auditing piece at the end, essentially the auditing module is built as if it's a customs auditor that checks line by line, checks if the commodity code matches the description, matches your clearance code, make sure all of that's correct before it goes in, which is yeah, essentially people don't have within there. There is the huge time saving as well, and we have the stat that I think it's around 43,000 hours now that we've saved customs agents. Essentially, we calculate that from the number of declarations that we've done, number of items we've processed, which is now at 40 something million as well. So 40 million items going through the border through our platform, and then we do a time calculation on the back of that. And yeah, so that's been a huge aspect, is the time, the accuracy, and the data visibility has been quite a big one. We're starting to get into a lot of conversations around supply chain visibility. We collect a lot of information throughout this process for things on like the invoice and the packing list. We get, for example, the registration of the vehicle and the registration of the ship and which warehouse it came from, which warehouse it's going to in the UK, or the opposite way around. So we can kind of tell you each vehicles it's been on. If an item's gone missing, we know which vehicle it was on and when. So we're starting to look at how do we leverage this data set we're starting to collect through there too. One of the big parts I haven't mentioned about Flitter as well is we don't have a front end whatsoever, really. We have the onboarding front end. When it's in operation, we don't have a platform you can look at, and that again was done intentionally because that's the way that customs agents work. If we talk to any tech person and tell them we don't have an application or a front end, they'd freak out. But yeah,
Yeah.
customs agents want another screen to look at. They like being on a call, onboarding, and getting their PDF invoice every month because that's how they get invoiced. They don't want to pay through Stripe or anything like that. So we're not going to spend the time setting it up.
So it's like a seamless integration, and instead of having to, because that's the other thing as well, isn't it? It could be the greatest tool ever, but if it requires a lot of onboarding and training and upskilling from staff, then you're probably not going to see the adoption rate as high
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you would. So, and like you say,
Yeah.
there's so many systems nowadays. So to make the strategic decision to not have another system that you've got to bookmark and go to and
Yeah.
remember your
Yeah, we
login
recently went
credentials.
to Multimodal, which is a huge shipping and logistics conference in Birmingham. We walk around it like everyone has a platform. We're the only tech company here without a platform. It feels wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a platform, but then like that came from interacting with Casper Group and interviewing with them and working with them. And essentially, do you want another tab open? Like, no, definitely not. So, okay, what can we do to make sure you don't have to be on something else? Yeah.
Okay. And little sneak peek into the future then. What's your product roadmap looking like for the next year,
Mhm.
5 years? Where do you see Flitter going in terms of product development and next steps?
Yeah, so there's two major things in our pipeline right now. The first one I've kind of already touched on, which was um, the other aspects of Flitter. Now that we've got these modules built and we know they work very well for customs, what else can that workflow do? So essentially, that workflow of extracting data from documents, being an agentic eye, going to multiple systems, collecting data, enriching a document, and delivering it, multiple document in, one document out, is we found hugely useful. So what else can we do with that? What other sectors can that touch as well? Is a big part of our roadmap. And the second roadmap part is again, I've slightly touched leveraging that data set that we're starting to collect around shipping. So what else we do with that? How do people want it delivered? We could make it accessible. Essentially, each customer's data is completely siloed, but do they want to access their data in a specific way? How do they want to leverage it? We recently won a TRIG grant, Transport Research and Innovation grant from the Connected Places Catapult, which has given us funding to build a module onto Flitter that allows us to do a carbon calculation with that data. So that's one way we're going to use the data set, is because we have the truck registration, the ship, the delivery points, we can do a carbon calculation for the journey. And not just the way that most carbon calculations are done now is through like a per container basis or a per vehicle basis, but we can go down to that very discrete package level and tell you this package emitted this much carbon in its transport journey, whichever it's going to be. It's just, that comes in as scope 3 emissions, which currently the UK doesn't monitor for SMEs, but the regulations are coming in for it to do. But yeah, that's got that whole visibility of the supply chain using that data, starting with carbon, is a huge part of the roadmap. Further down there, we will probably have a platform at some point. Not yet. Someone at some point will want a platform. I see that within the 2-year basis. Yeah, I will give in at some point and build one. But yeah, so the platform's going to be there, a data analysis tool that kind of comes out of the that leveraging that data. If we could essentially build a BI tool within our system to allow them to analyze their own data set, that would be quite interesting. There's also kind of further work and communication. We're doing a lot of work on the policy side with HMRC, both through Casper, through Seer, and through Flitter, working with HMRC directly, the Centre for Digital Trade, a few of these different trading bodies, to see what's happening in policy, how that's going to affect our product, and us kind of helping to inform the government on what can be done in supply chains and how automation can work. That's a huge part of the work that we do. And then international expansion too. So we do UK imports, exports through customs, but yeah, we want to do France, Germany, Italy, EU, Australia. America's a bit of a touchy one right now because their customs is a little bit sticky. But yeah, it's on the roadmap, is that international expansion. Yeah.
Very nice. And I hate to ask it, Owen, but you said before 43,000 hours saved. What do you say to the people that moan about it replacing humans and we're all going to have mass unemployment because of AI in 5, 10 years' time? I often refer to it saying, instead of having people that used to be cost centers, getting AI to do that, and now you can now repurpose them into value creators so they can do things that we didn't have before. What do you have a message for those kind of people that are saying AI is the worst, it's going to replace everyone?
Yeah, it's 100% around that side of essentially taking your cost centers and allowing them to do a role that's bringing money into the company, is what we inform. But I mean, if you talk to any customs agent, that part of just taking text out of a PDF or out of an Excel sheet and reformatting it into another sheet is everyone's least favorite part of the job. No one liked it. It was everyone's worst part of the day. So we've taken the worst part of the day and made it instant. We had an onboarding call yesterday with a customer that literally screamed as she saw it show up in her system, because it was like a 5,000 line declaration. Fantastic feedback when someone screams and says it's but it was a 5,000 item declaration. She used to spend across 3 team members, they'd spend like all day doing this one declaration, which is crazy. And it just showed up and they're happy. Now they're able to go and do more work as well. So for example, with Casper Customs, they haven't gotten rid of any staff, but they're doing a crap ton more work now. They're just getting more work instead. It's not as if no one's being replaced. It's just, no, those people can do more. Huge side of it. The analogy that I use for that, kind of as AI taking over and things like that, which I quite like, is when humans lived in caves, it took one person to go find a cave and live in it. When we lived in mud houses, it maybe took 3 people to put together a mud house. When we lived in a wooden hut, it took 10 people to put it together. Brick houses, when you look across the supply chain, are hundreds of people. A spaceship is thousands of people to make it. As things get more complicated and we go on, more people are needed to do that thing. And across the entire supply chain. I mean, the amount of people that we're using across the supply chain to build Flitter and get it deployed and all of that is quite large as well. But yeah, as my belief is that as things get more technical, more complicated, you need more humans looking at it from different perspectives and doing different roles. So yeah, the whole AI job replacement thing, I don't worry about, and I don't think people should, because people will find different roles to fit into anyway.
Yeah. So your point is essentially that AI is improving the standard, quality, and amount of work across the board, not
Yeah.
replacing the work in its entirety. In terms of, like you were saying before, the accuracy now is so much higher. People don't have to scrape 5,000 words out of a PDF or whatever file it comes in, or an image. You know, now they can do even more work, which means that they're
Mhm.
becoming more profitable, there's more revenue. You can get engaged in more things, and the standard,
Yeah,
like you say,
it's just
can't
getting rid
literally
of these
stream.
mundane tasks. Yeah, getting rid of these mundane tasks that kind of came. I don't know when they appeared. It must have been like early 2000s. These tasks that exist within companies that are just copying data from one place to another, and not really adding anything to it. Um, no one who does those tasks like that task. Like, it's no one
Yeah,
enjoys being data from a PDF and put into an Excel sheet or retyping data somewhere else. And yeah, unless someone now reaches out and tells me they love that part of the job, then I get told off for it. But yeah,
now, I've seen an enormous amount of that copying, pasting, and the duplication of it as well. In terms of, you think the
yeah,
copy and pasting then ends there, but then they might have to copy and paste it again. I've seen up to 3 times copying and pasting the
mhm,
same data because nothing's connected.
yeah,
So you're kind of
yeah.
taking
I
that
mean, unlike
away.
the yeah, the whole visibility. I guess this kind of goes into next what supply chain looks like as well. Is a huge part of that that's coming up is blockchain, which I've interacted with blockchain things for a while on Web3, and I never really got the fad of it. NFTs didn't do anything for me, um, but there's a huge driver now to essentially get multiple parts of the supply chain on a blockchain, and I think that I could see Flitter being a part of that, because we have the data record, the customs clearance, we have each point in a chain where the vehicles touch. We could see they're essentially writing each part of that to a smart contract. And again, I see that kind of thing being used for that legal negotiation side as well. If you can look at, said you have that on a chain where you have a smart contract that is a duplication of an actual contract that says these goods are going to be delivered here. You have a change of a term within there. You write that into the next block on the chain, in on a blockchain, and then you change a term, and then if you go back, you can see all of the different changes, and it's signed, of what happened within a contract. You can see where and when. So I can see that happening soon. There's a brilliant chain and company called IOTA that's being used a lot in the supply chain now. But yeah, that's an interesting one, I think, that's coming up.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Mhm.
Look forward to that. So finally, then, how,
Yep.
if people are interested, they're engaged, they've heard all the benefits and the advantages of going with Flitter, they've heard how to get involved. What's the next steps? How can they get in touch?
Yeah. So next steps would be, if you're interested in Flutter, please reach out to our website. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn, add me on LinkedIn as well. More than happy to give you a demo on there. I think Elliot's also put a QR code on the screen as well, where you're able to scan that, and go to our website. But yeah, on our website, you can click book a meeting. You can then brought up to a calendar view. You can choose a time and date that works for you. And yeah, you can enter in the notes there if it's you want a demo of the system, or if you just want to chat to us. If you want to talk to me specifically, please feel free to put that into the message as well, and I'll be sure to join the call. But yeah, happy to talk about you adopting Flitter, or if you have any product ideas, or if you just want to talk about automation on that side. Yeah, reach out. Happy to.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for being on the first ever Data Stream Live episode. Looking forward
Mhm.
to more in
Thank
the
you.
future. We're going to touch on all sorts regarding AI ethics, and we've got all sorts of interesting guests over the next few weeks. But if anybody else wants to talk to us more about sort of getting your data ready for the AI um, future, revolutionizing your business and getting more interconnected, then please scan the QR code, visit DataStream website, and you can also book a meeting with myself, and we can talk more in detail. But for now, thank you very much, Owen. I appreciate it,
Mhm.
and stay in touch.
It's all right. Thank you.